Oh, hi. My name's Juliet, and today I'm doing a reflection on the autoethnographic research done for CMN4185. So, this is just a reflection of my research process and the presentations I viewed and just my feelings regarding it all. So, this process which required us to choose field sites and then take field notes on them and then code them. It was an interesting one, but it was surprisingly challenging. So the first challenge I kind of faced with this was checking my own biases. So my first field site was the climate teach-in, and I had mixed emotions coming in. I was like, it was a feeling of not being able to be part of it, but also like I had seen it all. And that this was something boring, this was something I was just included from, but also like, oh, this could be interesting as well. And I kind of had to check the fact that I don't know everything, even if I feel like I've seen it all. And this was something I noticed throughout my research, so I had to step back and be like, oh, we have seen this before, we being me, I've seen this before, I've read about it, I've taken it in, but I haven't taken it in fully, and I have never realized the potential outcomes of certain information I've read, if that makes any sense. So like from articles being posted, or actually my own feelings too, like how far those could go. So that was the first thing, was checking my biases and making sure that I wasn't going into this with my typical negative view of technology. While still being addicted to it, I tend to have a negative view of how I perceive people on platforms or how I perceive news sources based on where they're providing me my information. I just, as a general overview, don't feel confident in social media and the accounts that are on there providing me information. So I kind of had to check that and be like, okay, this could be a reliable source of information. Another roadblock I kind of ran into, which was kind of surprising, was actually the creative aspect of this and the opportunity for us as students to finally express our own thoughts on an issue, rather than just reading previous literature and using that, although that was required for the assignment, but instead of just relying entirely on that and not having original thoughts, this was very much based on how we felt about what we were studying. It was an opportunity for us to study things that we care about, which was new, but it was difficult. I didn't realize that throughout my university career that I felt stuck in a certain bubble, and I came in thinking I could express more individual thought and more opinion-based thought, but haven't been able to. And it was a little shocking. It was a little hard. For even making these videos, it has been difficult for me to be like, okay, my thoughts are okay. I don't have to have this backed up by facts. How I feel about it and how I engage in whichever environment, whether it be physical, whether it be on social media, it's okay, and my opinions and thoughts matter. And that was actually something I was kind of surprised to run into, that I didn't feel capable of being creative and of expressing my opinions because it had been so long since I had been given an opportunity to within this academic space. So it was kind of mentioned to me that I should reflect on the other presentations done by students, and there were definitely trends that I noticed in these presentations and what was being talked about and how students felt. The one thing that really stood out to me was the constant comment on how media forces us to believe as individuals that we have to create the solutions to climate change. And how people reacted so negatively, I find, to that how dare they put it on us to make changes, which I totally agree. How dare these massive corporations put it on us to make changes and say that we're the ones who need to buy responsibly and make these everyday choices. But in reality, it is also up to us. Of course, there are changes that need to be made at a level way, way beyond us, and that is where it needs to make enough radical change for us to kind of backtrack on the bad things we've done to the environment. But it is also up to us as individuals to make changes in our everyday lives, because I know that I, for one, am definitely very reliant on single-use plastics and on things that could be easily replaced by products that are more sustainable. And although even in my previous video I said, oh, these things are too expensive, they're too expensive, but in reality, I have a responsibility as a citizen of the world to make these changes, and it is unfortunate that they do cost so much and they do seem so out of reach, especially as currently being a student, it's not necessarily affordable. It is very unfortunate, but it's also a necessary reality of the current environmental crisis we find ourselves in. I did enjoy watching the presentations. This was just something that popped up a couple of times, and it was just something I had some thoughts about. But I did like the presentations. They were a bit gloomy at points, but in reality, this is a gloomy situation we as young people find ourselves in. So it's a reality. But I did like the presentations where solutions were offered, and I didn't feel like this is the end of days, that there's something we can do and that we can feel okay, and that there are options that can be made that aren't just plant more trees and use a bamboo toothbrush. There's something bigger, and we can become part of things that are maybe more radical change, which is really what I found in this class with Professor Strangelove, was a calling for radical change, which was so refreshing. So, thank you. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.